A billionaire CEO comforts a crying child at the Super Bowl game. He freezes when he sees the child's mom. "Mommy," the little girl's voice cracks with panic, cutting through the roar of 70,000 people and a halftime show that shakes the stadium concrete. She's 6 years old, dark curls stuck to her tear-streaked face, spinning in circles near the luxury suite corridor, searching for the one person who makes the world make sense. "Mommy, please." A man in an expensive suit kneels in front of her. His voice is calm, practiced, the kind of voice used to command rooms full of investors. Hey, it's okay. You're safe. What's your name?" The girl hiccups, rubbing her eyes with small fists. Sophie. Sophie. That's a beautiful name. "I'm Matthew. Can you tell me what your mom looks like?" Sophie tries to answer, but the words tangle with sobs. Matthew rests a gentle hand on her shoulder, and something unfamiliar moves through his chest. He's not good with children. He doesn't have time for children. But something about this little girl's terror bypasses every professional instinct and lands somewhere undefended. "It's okay. We're going to find her. I promise." And that's when he hears it. Sophie. The voice punches through the crowd like a flare. Desperate. Fierce. Familiar in a way that makes Matthew's entire nervous system go still. He looks up. Lena comes around the corner at a near run, her face flushed with panic, her eyes scanning the crowd with the single-minded intensity of a mother whose child has vanished. She sees Sophie first, relief flooding her features, and then her gaze shifts to the man kneeling beside her daughter. Their eyes meet. Lena stops moving. Matthew stops breathing. 6 years collapse into the space between them. 6 years since he last saw her face. 6 years since she told him she was pregnant, and he told her the timing was bad. 6 years since she sent a single message and disappeared from his life like smoke. He had assumed she ended the pregnancy. He had let himself believe that because believing anything else would have required him to face what he'd done. But the little girl standing in front of him has his eyes, his jawline, the same stubborn set to her mouth he sees in childhood photos of himself. Lena moves before he can speak. She sweeps Sophie into her arms, holding her so tightly the child squeaks. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. I turned around and you were gone and—" Her voice is shaking, but when she looks at Matthew over Sophie's shoulder, her expression goes flat. Controlled. The kind of control that takes enormous effort. "Thank you for staying with her." Her tone is polite, distant, the voice a stranger uses with another stranger after a small kindness. Matthew tries to find words, but his brain has short-circuited. This is Lena. This is his daughter. This is 6 years of choices he can't undo standing 3 feet away from him, and he doesn't know how to breathe around the enormity of it. Lena, we need to go. Thank you again." She turns and walks away, Sophie's arms locked around her neck, and Matthew stands frozen in the stadium corridor while the world moves around him like he's underwater. His daughter. He has a daughter. And Lena has been raising her alone for 6 years while he built his empire and accepted his accolades and never once asked what happened to the woman who helped him build it all. Lena doesn't stop walking until she's back in her seat, Sophie settled beside her with a box of overpriced popcorn and a promise that Mommy won't let go of her hand again. The game roars back to life on the field below, but Lena can't hear it. Her heart is hammering so hard she's afraid Sophie will feel it. She had known this was a risk. Coming to a public event in the same city where Matthew Cordell's company headquarters looms over the financial district like a glass monument to ambition. But Sophie had wanted to go so badly, had saved her allowance and talked about nothing else for weeks, and Lena had thought, what are the odds? Apparently, the odds were excellent. Lena's hands shake as she smooths Sophie's hair. She forces her breathing to steady, forces her face into something calm, because Sophie is watching her with those sharp, intuitive eyes that miss nothing. "Mommy, are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby. Just scared when I couldn't find you. The man was really nice. He said we'd find you, and we did." Lena swallows against the tightness in her throat. "I'm glad he helped you. But you have to stay close to me, okay? Always." Sophie nods solemnly and returns her attention to the game. Lena stares at the field and sees nothing. Her mind is racing through calculations, through possibilities, through the careful life she has built brick by brick over 6 years and how fragile it suddenly feels. Matthew saw her. Matthew saw Sophie. And unless he's completely lost the ability to do basic math, he knows. Lena had told herself for 6 years that she didn't owe him the truth, that when he'd said he wasn't ready, When he looked at her that night in her apartment like her pregnancy was a problem to be solved rather than a life to be considered, he had forfeited the right to know. That she had chosen to protect Sophie from being secondary in a billionaire's world where image mattered more than people. She had chosen to disappear because staying would have meant teaching her daughter that love required self-erasure, and she would make that choice again. But now the choice has been made visible. Now Matthew knows, and Lena has no idea what happens next. Matthew doesn't return to his suite. He can't. His guests, investors, board members, people whose approval he's spent a decade cultivating, are watching the game and making small talk and expecting him to perform the version of himself they've come to rely on. Controlled, visionary, unshakable. He feels like he's been shattered. He finds a quiet corner near the executive bathrooms and pulls out his phone with shaking hands. He scrolls back through old contacts, looking for Lena's number, but it's gone. He must have deleted it at some point, or she changed it, or he doesn't have her number. He doesn't have her address. He doesn't have any way to reach her except through people they used to know, and he erased most of those connections years ago when it became easier to pretend Lena had never existed. Matthew leans against the wall and closes his eyes, and the memories come whether he wants them or not. Lena, at 24, brilliant and determined and willing to work herself to exhaustion because she believed in what they were building. Lena catching the financial error that would have tanked their first investor meeting. Lena suggesting the pivot that saved the company, mentioned so casually over Chinese takeout that he almost missed it. Lena rewriting his pitch deck at 3 a.m. because she knew it wasn't good enough yet, and she cared too much to let him fail. Lena in his arms in her tiny apartment, talking until dawn about everything and nothing. Lena telling him she was pregnant, her voice steady but her hands shaking. Lena's face when he said he wasn't ready. He had left that night and told himself he was being practical. The company was at a critical stage. A merger was on the table. His board had expectations. He couldn't afford distractions. He had framed her pregnancy as a distraction. And when she disappeared 2 weeks later, when she sent that single message, "I've decided to handle this on my own. Please don't contact me. I wish you well." He had felt relief. Relief. Matthew opens his eyes and stares at the stadium corridor, at the families streaming past with their children and their easy joy, and he feels something he's spent a decade avoiding. Shame. Not the performative kind. The real kind. The kind that lives in your chest like a stone. He pulls up his contacts again and scrolls until he finds a name he hasn't thought about in years. James. A former employee who left the company on good terms, who had been friendly with Lena, who might, maybe, still have a way to reach her. Matthew types out a message, deletes it, types it again. "Hey, I know this is random. Do you still have Lena's contact info? I ran into her today and realized I don't have a way to reach her. Would appreciate anything you can share." He stares at the message for a full minute before hitting send. Then he sits in the corner of a Super Bowl stadium, surrounded by noise and celebration, and waits. Lena gets Sophie home, through the bath, through the bedtime routine, through the endless questions about the game and the halftime show and the nice man who helped her when she was lost. She answers on autopilot, her mind somewhere else entirely, until finally Sophie is asleep, curls spread across her pillow, one small hand tucked under her cheek. Lena stands in the doorway of Sophie's room and feels the fear rise like a tide. For 6 years, this has been her world, small and safe and whole, a rented apartment with good light, a daughter who asks 1,000 questions and believes her mother has all the answers, a quiet life built on the other side of erasure. Lena had given up everything to build this, the career she'd helped create, the city she'd loved, the man she'd thought might eventually choose her. She had let herself be erased from the story of the company she'd helped build, because staying would have meant raising Sophie in the margins. She had chosen herself, chosen Sophie, chosen wholeness over fragments, and it had been the right choice. But right choices still have costs. Lena closes Sophie's door and walks to the kitchen. She pours herself a glass of water she doesn't drink and stares at her phone on the counter like it's a live wire. She knows Matthew will try to contact her. Men like him don't let things go. They solve problems. They close gaps. They rewrite narratives until the story makes sense again. And Lena is not a problem to be solved. She picks up her phone and scrolls through her contacts until she finds the name she's looking for. Rebecca, the one person from the old life who stayed in touch, who knew the whole story, who had helped Lena move across state lines 6 years ago and never asked for explanations. The phone rings twice before Rebecca answers. "Lena?" It's almost 11. You okay? Lena's voice comes out steadier than she feels. Matthew saw me today, at the Super Bowl. He saw Sophie. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "Oh, shit." "Yeah. Does he know?" "He's not an idiot, Becca. She has his eyes. He knows." Another pause. "What are you going to do?" Lena leans against the counter and closes her eyes. "I don't know. But he's going to come looking. And I need you to do me a favor. Anything. If he contacts you asking for my information, tell him I don't want to be found." Rebecca hesitates. "Lena, I get it. I do. But he's her father. Doesn't he have a right to—" "He had a right 6 years ago when I told him I was pregnant, and he said the timing was bad. He had a right when he chose his merger over his child. He doesn't get to show up now because his guilt finally caught up with him." Lena's voice is harder than she intends, and she softens it. "I'm not saying never. I'm saying not now. Not until I figure out what this means for Sophie. She's happy, Becca. She's whole. I won't let him destabilize that because he suddenly wants to play dad." Rebecca sighs. "Okay, I'll stall him if he reaches out. But Lena, he's got resources. If he really wants to find you, he will—" "I know." Lena hangs up and stares at her phone for a long time. Then she opens her messages and scrolls back through months of nothing until she finds the last message Matthew ever sent her. 6 years old. Unanswered. "I hope you're okay. If you need anything, let me know." She had blocked him the next day. Lena's thumb hovers over his name. She could reach out. She could set terms. She could control the narrative before he tries to rewrite it. Or she could wait. She locks her phone and sets it face down on the counter. She's been rewriting her own story for 6 years. She's not about to let Matthew Cordell back into it just because he finally bothered to look up from his empire long enough to notice what he'd lost. 3 days pass. Matthew barely sleeps. He goes through the motions at work, meetings, calls, strategy sessions, but his mind is nowhere near the conference rooms and quarterly projections. His assistant asks twice if he's feeling well. A board member comments that he seems distracted. He is distracted. He's haunted. James never responded to his message. Matthew doesn't know if that means James doesn't have Lena's information, or if Lena told him not to share it. Either way, the door is closed. So Matthew does something he's never done before. He hires a private investigator. Then he cancels the contract 6 hours later, sitting in his office at 2 a.m, staring at the paperwork, and realizing that showing up with investigators will destroy whatever microscopic chance he might have. He can't buy his way into this. He can't strategize his way in. He can't leverage connections or deploy resources or do any of the things that have worked for him in every other area of his life. The realization is terrifying. Matthew has built an empire on control, on information asymmetry, on being 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. But Lena has been 3 steps ahead of him for 6 years, and he didn't even know the game was being played. On the 4th day, he gets a message from an unknown number. "This is Rebecca, Lena's friend. She doesn't want to hear from you. Respect that." Matthew stares at the message, his heart pounding. Then he types back, "I just need to talk to her. 5 minutes. I won't push for anything else. Please." The response comes an hour later. "She said no." Matthew sits with that for a long time. Then he types, "Tell her I understand why she left. Tell her I'm not trying to take anything from her. I just need her to know that I know. And that I'm sorry." This time there's no response. Matthew puts his phone down and stares out the window of his corner office at the city sprawling below. Somewhere out there, Lena is living a life he knows nothing about, raising a daughter he's never met, building a world that doesn't include him. And for the first time in a decade, Matthew Cordell has no idea what to do. 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, Lena's phone buzzes with a message from Rebecca. He's persistent, keeps asking me to pass along messages, says he just wants to talk. What do you want me to tell him? Lena is at the park with Sophie, watching her daughter climb the jungle gym with the fearless determination of someone who hasn't learned to doubt herself yet. The sun is warm. The day is beautiful. Their life is small and safe and exactly what Lena built it to be. But Sophie has been asking questions. She asked about the man at the game 3 times this week. She asked why Mommy seemed sad after they got home. She asked, in that casual way children ask devastating questions, if Mommy ever gets lonely. Lena had answered carefully, honestly, "No, baby. I have you. I'm not lonely." But it was a lie. Lena is lonely. She has been lonely for 6 years. She has friends, has work, has a life she's proud of. But there's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from making enormous choices alone, from carrying the weight of a child's entire world on your shoulders, from being the only one who remembers what it costs to get here. And now, Matthew wants to talk. Lena types back to Rebecca. If I agree to meet him once, will he leave me alone after? Rebecca's response is immediate. I don't know, but he seems pretty wrecked. Lena. I've never heard him sound like this. Lena locks her phone and watches Sophie swing from bar to bar, laughing when she makes it all the way across without falling. She's so bright, so whole, so completely unaware that her entire world might be about to shift. Lena had promised herself she would protect Sophie from being secondary, from being a complication in a billionaire's carefully managed image, from growing up feeling like she mattered less than mergers and board meetings and the stories powerful men tell about themselves. But she had also promised herself she would tell Sophie the truth when the time was right. Maybe the time is now. Maybe Matthew's showing up is the universe forcing her hand. Or maybe it's a test, a chance to prove that 6 years of boundaries and clarity and moral certainty weren't just survival mechanisms, that she really has reclaimed her power, that she really can face the man who erased her and not disappear again. Lena picks up her phone and types, "Tell him I'll meet him. Once. Public place. Daytime. He gets 20 minutes and then I'm done." She hits send before she can change her mind. The cafe Lena chooses is across town, far from her apartment, far from Sophie's school, far from anywhere that matters. Neutral ground. Crowded enough that Matthew can't make a scene. Quiet enough that they can talk. Lena arrives early and takes a table near the back. She orders coffee she won't drink and watches the door with her arms crossed and her entire nervous system on high alert. She hasn't seen Matthew in 6 years except for that frozen moment in the stadium corridor. She has no idea what to expect. The man she knew was brilliant and driven and capable of profound tenderness in private and complete emotional unavailability in public. She has no idea if he's changed. She's not sure it matters. This isn't about him. This is about deciding what Sophie deserves to know. The door opens and Matthew walks in. Lena's breath catches despite herself. He looks older, thinner. There are lines around his eyes that weren't there before, and his suit, expensive, perfectly tailored, hangs on him like he's lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. He scans the room, finds her, and something in his expression cracks open. He crosses to her table and stops a few feet away, like he's afraid to get closer. Lena. Matthew. Her voice is cool, controlled. She gestures to the chair across from her. You have 20 minutes. Sit down. He sits. For a moment, neither of them speaks. Matthew's hands are clenched on the table, and Lena can see him trying to organize his thoughts, trying to find the right words, trying to do what he's always done, control the narrative. She's not going to let him. Why did you want to meet? She asks, her tone flat. Matthew looks at her, and the expression on his face is something she's never seen before. Vulnerability, raw and undefended. Because I saw her, I saw Sophie, and He stops. Starts again. I need to know. Is she mine? Lena feels the anger rise, cold and sharp. You don't get to ask me that. Lena, you don't get to see my daughter once, do some math and demand confirmation like you have rights here. You gave up your rights 6 years ago when I told you I was pregnant, and you said the timing was bad. Her voice is quiet, but lethal. Matthew flinches. I know. Do you? Lena leans forward, her eyes locked on his. Do you actually know what you did? Or are you here because your guilt finally caught up and you want me to make you feel better about it? Matthew goes very still. That's not why I'm here. Then why are you here, Matthew? What do you want? He opens his mouth, closes it. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. I want to know what happened. After you left, I want to know if you're okay, if she's okay. I want to know if there's anything I can do. Lena laughs, and it's not a kind sound. You want to know what happened? I'll tell you what happened. I left because staying would have meant raising our daughter in the margins of your life. I moved 3 states away and found work and went to every prenatal appointment, alone. I assembled a crib by myself at 8 months pregnant because I couldn't afford to hire anyone. I gave birth in a hospital where I didn't know a single person and held our daughter for the first time and made her a promise. She pauses, her voice hardening. I promised her she would always come first, not second, not after your board meetings or your mergers or your image. First, and I have kept that promise every single day for 6 years. Matthew's face has gone pale. Lena, I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You got my message and you let me disappear and you moved on. And that's fine. That was your choice. But you don't get to show up now and act like you're owed answers. I'm not. Matthew's voice cracks. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I need to know if there's any way I can be part of her life, part of your life. I know I don't deserve it. Stop. Lena's voice cuts through his spiraling like a blade. You're right. You don't deserve it. And this isn't about what you need. This is about what Sophie needs. And right now, what she needs is stability and safety and a mother who doesn't bring chaos into her world because a man who abandoned her suddenly decided he wants to play dad. Matthew looks at her, and Lena sees something shift in his expression. Something like understanding. What would I need to do? Lena blinks. What would I need to do? Matthew repeats, slower, to prove that I'm not trying to play dad, that I understand this is about her, not me. What would I need to do for you to even consider letting me meet her? Lena stares at him. She hadn't expected this. She'd expected defensiveness, justifications, maybe anger. She'd expected him to try to rewrite the story, to explain away his choices, to make himself the hero of a narrative where he'd been the villain. She hadn't expected surrender. She takes a breath and lets it out slowly. You'd need to prove you can put someone else first, not for a news cycle, not for optics, for real. You'd need to prove that Sophie wouldn't be another acquisition in your portfolio, another legacy piece, another thing you control. She leans back in her chair, her arms crossed. And honestly, Matthew, I don't think you can. I don't think you know how. You've spent a decade building an empire where you get to be the center of every story, where your vision, your brilliance, your decisions are what matter. Sophie doesn't fit into that world, and I won't force her into it. Matthew is quiet for a long time. When he finally speaks, voice is hoarse. You're right, about all of it. I erased you from the company story because admitting you were essential would have meant admitting I didn't do it alone. I let you disappear because it was easier than facing what I'd chosen. And I have no idea how to be a father because I've spent my entire adult life optimizing for everything except being a decent human being. He meets her eyes. But I want to learn, not because I think I deserve a second chance, because she deserves a father who shows up. And if you give me the opportunity, if you give me any opportunity at all, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I can put her first. Lena feels something crack in her chest. Not forgiveness, not trust, but something smaller. A question. What if he means it? She stands abruptly, and Matthew stands with her, panic flashing across his face. Lena, please. I need to think. Her voice is steady, but her hands are shaking. This isn't a decision I make in a coffee shop. This is my daughter's life. If I let you in, and you fail her, if you make her feel like she's secondary, or conditional, or not enough, I will never forgive myself, so I need time. Matthew nods, his throat working. How much time? I don't know. As much as I need. She picks up her bag and slings it over her shoulder. Then she looks at him one last time. You said you erased me from the company story. You're right, you did. And I let you, because fighting for credit felt less important than protecting my daughter from a world that would have erased her too. Her voice drops, quiet and lethal. But don't mistake my silence for weakness, Matthew. I didn't disappear because you made me. I disappeared because I chose to. And if I choose to let you into Sophie's life, it won't be because you convince me. It'll be because I decided she deserves the chance to know you. She turns and walks toward the door. Lena. She stops, but doesn't turn around. I'm sorry for all of it. I'm so sorry. Lena's shoulders tense. Then she keeps walking. Lena makes it to her car before the tears come. She sits in the driver's seat with her hands gripping the steering wheel and lets herself cry for the first time in years. Not because she's weak, not because she's broken, but because this is hard. She thought she'd moved past this. Thought she'd processed the grief of loving someone who couldn't love her back, of giving everything to build something and watching someone else take credit, of raising a child alone when it could have been shared. But seeing Matthew again, hearing him apologize, watching him sit across from her looking wrecked and lost, it brings it all back. The good parts and the bad parts. The late nights working on pitch decks and believing they were building something that mattered. The way he used to look at her like she was the only solid thing in a world that moved too fast. The way he'd rest his head in her lap and let her see the parts of him he didn't show anyone else. And then the moment it all collapsed, the night she told him she was pregnant and watched his face close off. The way he'd set him not ready, like her body and her life and their child were inconveniences to be managed. The relief in his eyes when he left her apartment, like he'd dodged a bullet. Lena wipes her eyes and takes a shaky breath. She had saved herself by leaving. She had built a life on the other side of that choice. A small life maybe by his standards, but it was whole. And now he wants in, not into her life. She's clear about that. Whatever they had is gone, burned down to ash 6 years ago. But into Sophie's life, into the story Lena has been writing alone. And Lena has to decide if he's earned that, if Sophie deserves that, if the risk of letting him in is worth the possibility that he might actually show up. She doesn't know. But as she drives home, the sun setting over the city she's made her own, Lena realizes something. She doesn't have to know yet. She has the power here. She controls the access, the terms, the pace. Matthew can't force his way in. He can't buy his way in. He can only wait for her to decide. And for the first time in 6 years, Lena feels the full weight of that power. She disappeared once to save herself. She's not disappearing again. But whether she lets him back in, that's her choice. And she'll make it on her terms. Matthew doesn't sleep that night. He lies in his penthouse apartment staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Lena said, every expression that crossed her face, every moment of controlled fury that told him exactly how much damage he'd done. She had asked him to prove he could put someone else first. Matthew has no idea how to do that. He spent a decade optimizing for control, for growth, for being the smartest person in every room. His entire identity is built on winning, on being 3 steps ahead, on rewriting narratives until they center him. But Lena doesn't want him to win. She wants him to surrender. The thought terrifies him. At 4 a.m, Matthew gets out of bed and does something he hasn't done in years. He opens his laptop and searches for Lena's name, not to find her address or her phone number, to find out what happened to her after she left. There's almost nothing. A few mentions in old company records, back when the team was small and her name appeared in early documentation. A LinkedIn profile that hasn't been updated in 6 years, listing her last position as consultant. No social media presence, no digital footprint. She erased herself as thoroughly from the internet as he erased her from the company's story. Matthew clicks through old files on his hard drive until he finds the pitch deck that landed their first major investor. He opens it and scrolls through the slides, and the memories come flooding back. Lena had rewritten half of this. She'd caught the gap in their market analysis, restructured the financial projections, sharpened the language until it sang. He remembers her at his kitchen table at 3 a.m, glasses sliding down her nose, marking up printouts with a red pen and explaining why his original framing would lose the room. He'd presented the deck the next day, and everyone had called him a visionary. He'd never corrected them. Matthew closes the laptop and sits in the dark of his too-large apartment, and for the first time in a decade, he lets himself feel the full weight of what he did. He didn't just abandon Lena. He erased her. He took her contributions and folded them into the mythology of his singular genius. He let investors and journalists and board members believe he'd built the company alone. He allowed the narrative to smooth over her existence because acknowledging her would have complicated the story. And when she left, when she told him she was handling it on her own, he'd felt relief because her absence made everything simpler. Matthew stands and walks to the window. The city sprawls below, glittering and indifferent. Somewhere out there, Lena is sleeping in an apartment he's never seen, next to a daughter he's never met, living a life he knows nothing about. A life she built in the space his erasure left behind. And he has no idea how to make that right, but he knows he has to try. Lena tells Sophie the next morning over breakfast. Not everything. Sophie is 6. She doesn't need to know about mergers and timing and the ways adults fail each other. But she deserves to know the truth. Lena takes a breath and sets down her coffee. Sophie, you know how you've been asking about your dad? Sophie's head snaps up, eyes wide. She nods, suddenly very still. Well, the man who helped you at the game. The nice man, that was him. Sophie's mouth falls open. That was my dad? Yes, baby. Does he know? About me? Lena's heart clenches. He does now. He didn't before, but he knows now. Sophie processes this with the intense focus she brings to everything important. Then she asks, quietly, why didn't he know before? Lena had prepared for this question, had practiced the answer, but sitting across from her daughter, seeing the confusion and hope and fear all tangled together on her small face, every rehearsed phrase evaporates. Because when I found out I was going to have you, your dad and I wanted different things. He had a very big job and a very big life, and I didn't think there would be room for us in it. So I decided we would make our own life, just you and me. Sophie's eyes are filling with tears. Did he not want me? Oh, baby. No, it's not that simple. He didn't know you yet. He didn't know how amazing you are, and I made the choice to leave before he had the chance to figure it out. Lena reaches across the table and takes Sophie's hand. But he knows now, and he wants to meet you, and I need to decide if that's the right thing for us. Sophie wipes her eyes with her free hand. Do you want him to meet me? Lena's breath catches. She hadn't expected Sophie to ask her that, to turn the question around and make Lena examine her own feelings instead of just making a parental decree. I don't know yet, sweetheart. I'm still figuring it out. Does he want to be my dad now? I think he wants to try, but wanting and doing are different things. So I need to make sure that if he meets you, he's really ready. Because you deserve someone who shows up and stays, not someone who shows up and leaves when things get hard. Sophie nods slowly. Then she asks, in a very small voice, what if he doesn't like me? Lena's heart breaks. She gets up from her chair and kneels beside Sophie, pulling her daughter into a fierce hug. Sophie, listen to me. You are brilliant and kind and funny and brave. If he doesn't see that, it's because there's something wrong with him, not you. Do you understand? Sophie nods against her shoulder, but Lena can feel her trembling. This is the cost Lena has been carrying for 6 years. The cost of her choice. Sophie is whole and loved and secure in so many ways, but there's a wound Lena can't heal. The wound of wondering why her father wasn't there. The wound of feeling on some deep inarticulate level that his absence means something about her worth. Lena had tried to protect Sophie from that, but absence is a presence all its own, and now Matthew is offering to fill it, if Lena lets him. 3 days later, Lena gets a text from an unknown number. She almost deletes it. Then she reads it. The message is short, factual, almost formal. It's a link to a video interview. Published that morning. Matthew's company, 10-year anniversary retrospective. Lena's stomach drops. She clicks the link. The video opens on Matthew sitting in a sleek studio, the company logo visible behind him. The interviewer is someone Lena vaguely recognizes, a tech journalist with a reputation for tough questions. The interviewer asks about the early days, the founding story, the pivot that saved the company. And Matthew does something Lena never expected. He tells the truth. The story that's been told about this company's founding is incomplete, Matthew says, his voice steady. I've been framed as a solo visionary, and I let that narrative stand because it was easier than complicating it. But the truth is, I didn't build this alone. The interviewer leans forward, intrigued. There was someone else involved in the early days. Her name is Lena. She was one of the first 3 employees. She rewrote our initial pitch deck, caught a fatal error in our financial projections, and suggested the pivot that ultimately saved the company when our first funding round fell through. Matthew pauses, and Lena sees something in his expression she's never seen before. Regret, real and undefended. I took credit for her work, not intentionally, not maliciously, but I allowed the story to be told in a way that erased her contributions. And when she left the company, I didn't correct the record. I let her disappear from the narrative because it was simpler. Because acknowledging her would have meant acknowledging that I wasn't the singular genius everyone wanted me to be. The interviewer looks stunned. Why are you telling us this now? Matthew meets the camera directly. Because it's the truth. And because Lena deserved credit 6 years ago. She deserves it now. This company exists because of her insights, her work, and her belief in what we were building. And I'm done pretending otherwise. The video ends. Lena sits on her couch, phone in hand, and feels her entire understanding of the situation shift. He told the truth, publicly, unambiguously, in a way that can't be walked back or softened or spun. He gave her the acknowledgement she never asked for and never got. Her phone buzzes. A text from the same unknown number. This isn't to manipulate you. This is because it's what should have happened 6 years ago. You were erased from the story. I'm trying to correct that. Whether you ever speak to me again or not, you deserve to be remembered. Lena reads the message 3 times. Then she does something she hasn't done in 6 years. She saves his number. The video goes viral in their industry. By the next morning, Lena's inbox is flooded with messages from former colleagues, old friends, people she hasn't spoken to since she left. Some are supportive, some are shocked. A few are accusatory, asking why she never said anything, why she let Matthew take credit if the work was hers. Lena deletes most of them without responding. But one message stops her. It's from the company's current CFO, someone who joined years after Lena left. I always wondered about the ghost in the origin story, the unnamed early team that got referenced but never detailed. Thank you for what you built. It matters that people know. Lena stares at the message for a long time. She had told herself for 6 years that the work mattered more than the credit, that she wasn't doing it for recognition, that letting herself be erased was worth it if it meant protecting Sophie from a world that would treat her as secondary. And all of that is still true. But being seen, being named, being remembered, it matters too. Matthew gave her that. Not because she asked, not because she demanded, because he chose to. Lena picks up her phone and types a message to the number she just saved. I saw the interview. The response comes within seconds. And Lena hesitates. Then she types, "It was the right thing to do. Thank you." A pause. Then, "It's not enough. I know it's not enough. But it's a start." Lena sits with that. Then she types, "You said you wanted to prove you could put someone else first. Keep going. I'm watching." She hits send and sets the phone down. She's not ready to let him meet Sophie. She's not ready to invite him into their lives. But she's willing to see if he means what he says. If this was a performance, he'll lose interest when he realizes she's not softening. But if it's real, he'll keep showing up. Lena will know the difference. Over the next month, Matthew does something Lena never anticipated. He keeps showing up. But not for Sophie. For her. He texts, but only to ask how she's doing. Not what Sophie is like. Not when he can meet her. Just simple questions about Lena's life. How is your work going? Are you sleeping okay? Is there anything you need? Lena answers cautiously at first, waiting for the pivot. For the moment, he'll leverage the small talk into access to Sophie. But the pivot never comes. He asks about her consulting projects, listens when she mentions she's struggling with a difficult client. The next day, he sends her a link to a resource that actually helps. He asks what she does for herself, outside of work and parenting. Lena admits she doesn't do much. He doesn't lecture. Just says, gently, that she deserves time for herself too. He tells her he's seeing a therapist, that he's working on the patterns that made him prioritize image over people. He doesn't ask for praise or validation, just states it like a fact. Lena watches all of this with the careful attention of someone who's been burned before. But slowly, cautiously, something shifts. She starts to believe he might actually be trying. One evening after Sophie is asleep, Lena calls her best friend. "I think he's changing," she says, and hears the disbelief in her own voice. Her friend, ever the skeptic, asks the hard question. Or is he performing change because he wants access to Sophie? Lena has asked herself the same thing 100 times. I don't know. But here's the thing. He's not asking for access. He hasn't mentioned meeting Sophie in 3 weeks. He's just showing up, for me. Like he's trying to prove he can put someone else first without expecting anything in return. And if he never gets to meet Sophie, if you decide the answer is no, Lena is quiet for a long time. Then I guess we'll find out if this is real or not. 6 weeks after the coffee shop meeting, Lena makes a decision. She texts Matthew, "I'm willing to let you meet Sophie. Once, supervised, public place. You don't tell her you're her father. You're just someone who knew her mom a long time ago. If it goes well, we'll talk about next steps. If it doesn't, we're done. Understand?" The response comes immediately. "I understand. Thank you. I won't let her down." "You better not." Lena sets the phone down and takes a shaky breath. She's terrified. Terrified that Matthew will disappoint Sophie. Terrified that he'll charm her and then vanish. Terrified that she's making a mistake that will destabilize the careful world she's built. But she's also clear. Sophie has been asking about him more and more, and Lena has always promised herself that she would give Sophie the truth, the choice, the agency to know her own story. This is part of that. And if Matthew fails, Lena will be there to catch Sophie, the way she's always been. They meet at a science museum on a Saturday afternoon. Lena had chosen the location carefully. Neutral ground, public, full of distractions if the conversation gets awkward. And science is Sophie's favorite thing, so even if the meeting is a disaster, at least Sophie gets to see the exhibits. Matthew arrives early. Lena sees him standing near the entrance, hands shoved in his pockets, looking more nervous than she's ever seen him. He's dressed casually. Jeans, a sweater, no suit, no armor. Lena appreciates that. Sophie is bouncing with barely contained excitement. Lena had told her that the man from the game wanted to meet her again, that he was Mommy's old friend, that he liked learning new things just like Sophie did. She hadn't told her the whole truth yet. That conversation will come later, if this goes well. Lena takes Sophie's hand and walks over. Matthew looks down at Sophie, and something in his face cracks open. "Hi, Sophie." His voice is gentle, careful. Sophie, suddenly shy, half hides behind Lena's leg. Then she peeks out. "Hi, I'm Matthew. Your mom and I used to work together a long time ago. She told me you really like science. Is that true?" Sophie nods, her curiosity starting to override her shyness. "I want to be an astronaut." Matthew's smile is genuine. "That's amazing. I've never thought much about space, but I'd love to learn. Do you have a favorite planet?" And just like that, Sophie is off. She talks about Mars and the rovers and how she's read 3 books about the solar system. And did Matthew know that Jupiter has 79 moons? Matthew listens like every word is the most important thing he's ever heard. He asks questions that show he's actually paying attention. He kneels down to her level when she points at things, following her from exhibit to exhibit with the kind of focus Lena has only ever seen him apply to business deals. But this isn't a deal. This is a little girl who wants someone to care about the things she cares about. And Matthew is showing up. Lena watches from a few steps behind, her throat tight. At one exhibit about black holes, Sophie gets stuck trying to understand the concept of gravity so strong that light can't escape. Matthew doesn't simplify it or talk down to her. He sits on the floor next to the display and thinks out loud with her, working through the idea together. So it's like, the black hole is so heavy that it pulls everything in and doesn't let go? Sophie asks. Exactly. Gravity is just things pulling on each other, and the heavier something is, the stronger it pulls. Black holes are so heavy that once something gets too close, it can't get away. Sophie nods slowly. Then she grins. That's so cool. Matthew grins back. It really is. Lena feels something shift in her chest. This is not the man who left her apartment 6 years ago saying the timing was bad. This is someone different, someone who's trying. After an hour, Sophie is starting to get tired. Lena suggests they wrap up. Sophie, to Lena's surprise, looks disappointed. Do we have to go? We've been here a while, baby. Matthew probably has other things to do. Matthew looks at Lena, and she sees the question in his eyes. She gives a tiny nod. I don't have anywhere else to be, he says to Sophie. But if your mom says it's time to go, we should listen to her. Sophie pouts but doesn't argue. She's learned that when Mommy says it's time, it's time. As they walk toward the exit, Sophie reaches up and tugs on Matthew's sleeve. Can you come back sometime? I didn't get to show you the planetarium. Matthew's eyes go bright. He glances at Lena. Lena hesitates. Then she says carefully, we'll see. If your mom says it's okay. Sophie looks up at Lena with those enormous hopeful eyes. Can he, Mommy? Please? Lena feels the weight of the decision pressing down on her. But she also sees the way Sophie's face lit up when Matthew listened to her talk about Mars. The way she felt seen and valued and taken seriously. That's what Lena wanted. Someone who would show up for Sophie. Not as an acquisition, not as a legacy piece, as a person. And Matthew just did that. Lena takes a breath and nods. We'll talk about it. Sophie beams. Outside the museum, Sophie gives Matthew a shy wave goodbye. Matthew waves back, his expression careful and controlled until Sophie turns away. Then Lena sees it. The emotion he's barely holding back. Gratitude, awe, something close to grief. He mouths, thank you. Lena nods once. Then she takes Sophie's hand and walks away. That night after Sophie is asleep, Lena sits on her couch and lets herself feel everything she's been holding back. Matthew showed up. He didn't perform. He didn't try to buy Sophie's affection with expensive gifts or grand gestures. He just listened. He engaged. He made her feel like what she cared about mattered. And Sophie liked him. Lena had been bracing for disaster, for disappointment, for the moment Matthew would reveal he couldn't actually do this. But he did it. For one afternoon, he put Sophie first. The question is whether he can keep doing it. Lena picks up her phone and texts him. "You did well today." The response is immediate. "She's incredible, Lena. She's so smart and curious and joyful. I can't believe I almost missed knowing her." Lena's eyes sting. "You're on probation. One good day doesn't undo 6 years. But it's a start." "I know. I'll keep showing up, however long it takes." Lena sets the phone down and stares at the ceiling. For 6 years, she's been the only one making decisions about Sophie's life. The only one carrying the weight. The only one who had to be everything. Mother, father, provider, protector. And now, maybe, she doesn't have to be alone anymore. The thought is terrifying and hopeful in equal measure. Lena doesn't know what happens next, but for the first time in 6 years, she's willing to find out. Let me tell you something about the people who come back. Not everyone who disappears from your life deserves to return. Some people leave because that's who they are. They take what they need and move on, and the kindest thing you can do for yourself is let them stay gone. But some people leave because they weren't ready yet, because they were too young, too scared, too trapped in their own patterns to see what they had until it was gone. Matthew was both. He left because he chose his empire over his family. That's a fact. He erased Lena because acknowledging her would have complicated his story. That's a fact too. But here's what's also true. When he saw what he'd done, when the reality of his choices finally caught up with him, he didn't make excuses. He didn't hire lawyers or deploy resources or try to control the narrative. He surrendered. He did the work. He showed up without demanding anything in return. That doesn't erase what he did, but it matters. Because here's the lesson I need you to hear today. You get to decide who earns a second chance, not based on what they promise, based on what they do, not on grand gestures, on consistent, humble, daily showing up. Lena didn't let Matthew back into her life because he apologized. She let him in because he proved, over weeks and months, that he understood what he'd done wrong, that he was willing to put Sophie first, even if it meant he never got what he wanted, that he could sit on a museum floor and listen to a 6-year-old talk about black holes like it was the most important conversation of his life. He earned it. And that's the standard. If someone from your past is asking for a second chance, don't listen to their words. Watch their actions. Are they doing the work? Are they showing up without keeping score? Are they putting your needs, your boundaries, your peace ahead of their own guilt or longing or ego? Because second chances aren't about fairness. They're about safety. They're about whether someone has changed enough that letting them back in won't cost you the life you built without them. Lena had every right to say no, to keep Matthew out forever, to raise Sophie alone and protect the world she'd created from the man who'd abandoned them. But she also had the right to say maybe, to test whether he'd changed, to give Sophie the chance to know her father if he could prove he deserved the title. That's power. That's sovereignty. That's what it looks like to reclaim your story. Here's my prayer for you today. I'm praying that you have the clarity to see the difference between someone who's sorry they got caught and someone who's actually changed. I'm praying for the strength to hold your boundaries, even when people you once loved are asking you to lower them. I'm praying that you trust yourself enough to know when to say no and when to say maybe. I'm praying that if you do give someone a second chance, they show up the way Matthew did, humbly, consistently, without demanding credit for doing what they should have done the first time. And I'm praying that whether you're alone or rebuilding or somewhere in between, you know deep in your bones that your worth has never been up for debate, that you didn't survive everything you survived just to settle for crumbs, that the life you're building right now is sacred, and anyone who wants to be part of it better prove they understand that. You are whole. You are worthy. Your story is yours to write. Let's see how Lena finishes hers. 3 months pass. Matthew has met Sophie 6 more times, always supervised, always on Lena's terms. He brings books about space. He listens when Sophie talks. He shows up exactly when he says he will and leaves when Lena says it's time. He doesn't push. He doesn't demand. He earns trust in increments so small that Lena almost doesn't notice it accumulating until one day she realizes she's not bracing for disaster anymore. She's cautiously hopeful. Sophie talks about Matthew now, the way she talks about her favorite teacher or her best friend from school. With easy affection, she asks when they're going to see him again. She shows Lena drawings she made of astronauts and says she wants to give one to Matthew. And one night, over dinner, Sophie asks the question Lena has been waiting for. "Mommy, is Matthew my dad?" Lena's fork stops halfway to her mouth. She sets it down carefully and meets her daughter's eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. He's your biological father. Sophie nods slowly, like she's been suspecting this for a while and is relieved to have it confirmed. Why didn't he live with us when I was a baby? Lena takes a breath. Because when I found out I was going to have you, Matthew wasn't ready to be a dad yet. And I had to decide if I was going to wait for him to be ready or if I was going to build a life for us on my own. I chose us, just you and me. Sophie is quiet for a moment. Is he ready now? And Lena realizes she doesn't know. But Sophie deserves the chance to find out. I think he's trying to be. But being ready and trying to be ready are different things. So I'm still figuring out if he's really changed or if he's just saying what I want to hear. Sophie considers this with the seriousness she brings to all big questions. Do you think he wants to be my dad? Lena's heart clenches. I think he wants to try. But wanting isn't enough, baby. He has to show up every day, not just when it's fun or easy. And I need to make sure he understands that before I let him be part of our lives in a bigger way. Sophie nods. Then she asks, very quietly, do you think he'll stay? And there it is. The fear Lena has been carrying for 6 years. The wound she can't heal on her own. The question only Matthew can answer. Lena reaches across the table and takes Sophie's hand. I don't know yet, but here's what I do know. No matter what happens with Matthew, you and I are solid. We're a team. And if he can't show up the way you deserve, then it's his loss, not yours. Because you are extraordinary, and anyone who doesn't see that isn't worth your time. Sophie's eyes fill with tears, but she nods. Okay, Mommy. Lena pulls her into a hug, and they sit there at the kitchen table holding each other while the world continues outside their small, safe life. Lena meets Matthew 2 days later without Sophie. She texts him and asks if he can meet for coffee. The same cafe where they met before. Matthew agrees immediately. When Lena walks in, Matthew is already there, and the anxiety on his face tells her he knows this conversation is important. She sits down across from him and doesn't waste time on small talk. Sophie knows you're her father. Matthew goes very still. She asked, and I told her the truth, that you weren't ready when she was born, that I chose to build a life without you, that you're trying now. Matthew's hands are shaking on the table. What did she say? She asked, if you're going to stay. The words land like a blow. Matthew closes his eyes. Lena, I need you to understand something. Lena's voice is steady, but fierce. Sophie is 6 years old. She's smart enough to notice patterns and young enough to be hurt by them in ways that will shape her for the rest of her life. If you're doing this because you feel guilty, or because you want to fix the past, or because you think being a father will make you feel like a better person, you need to walk away now. Matthew opens his eyes. That's not why I'm doing this. Then why are you doing it? He takes a breath. Because I've spent 3 months getting to know the most incredible kid I've ever met, and the idea of not being part of her life is unbearable. Because when she talks about Mars or black holes or why penguins can't fly, I feel like I'm seeing the world the way it's supposed to be seen. Because she's brilliant and kind and so much better than I deserve, and I want to be the kind of person who shows up for her, not someday. Now, he pauses, and because you were right, I spent a decade putting myself at the center of every story, and the only thing it got me was empty. But when I'm with Sophie, when I'm listening to her talk about things that matter to her, I'm not the center. She is, and that feels more important than anything I've ever built. Lena watches him carefully. Words are easy, Matthew. Showing up is hard, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when she's difficult, or you're tired, or your work is demanding your attention. Can you actually do this? Not for 3 months, for 18 years, for the rest of your life. Matthew meets her eyes. I don't know if I'll be perfect. I'll probably mess up. But I'm committed to trying. And if I do mess up, I'll own it and fix it and keep showing up. Because she deserves that, and so do you. Lena feels the last wall start to crack. She spent 6 years protecting Sophie, protecting herself, building a world where they didn't need anyone else. And it's been good. It's been enough. But maybe it can be more. Maybe Sophie deserves a father who shows up. And maybe Lena deserves not to carry the weight alone. She takes a breath and makes the choice. Sophie's 7th birthday is in 2 weeks. We're having a party at the park. Small, just a few friends and the people who've been part of our lives. If you want to come, you can. Not as a guest. As her father, Matthew's breath catches. Are you sure? No, Lena says honestly. But I'm willing to find out. You've earned that much. Matthew's eyes go bright. Thank you. I won't let her down. I won't let you down. You better not. Because if you do, there's no third chance. This is it. Matthew nods. I understand. Lena stands to leave. Then she stops and looks at him one more time. For what it's worth, I think you're different than you were 6 years ago. I don't know if that means you've changed permanently, or if you're just trying hard right now, but I'm willing to give you the chance to prove it. She walks away before he can respond. Sophie's 7th birthday party is perfect. The weather is warm, the park is full of laughter and children running and the easy joy of people who care about each other. Lena's chosen family is there. The single moms who helped her survive the early years. Sophie's favorite teacher. The friends Sophie has made at school. And Matthew, he's not at the center of anything. He's on the periphery, helping set up tables, handing out juice boxes, talking to the other parents like a regular person instead of a billionaire CEO. He brought a gift, the beginner's telescope Sophie had been wanting, and when she opened it, her face lit up like he'd given her the moon. Lena watches from across the picnic area as Matthew kneels down to show Sophie how to adjust the focus. Watches as Sophie throws her arms around his neck in an impulsive hug. Watches as Matthew closes his eyes and holds on like she's the most precious thing in the world. And Lena feels it. Not forgiveness exactly. Not yet, but something close. A cautious opening. A willingness to believe that maybe, just maybe, this is real. Later, after the cake has been eaten and the games have been played and the guests are starting to leave, Matthew catches Lena's eye from across the tables. He mouths, "Thank you." Lena nods. Then she surprises herself by walking over to him. "You can stay, if you want. We're going to set up the telescope in the backyard and look at the moon." Matthew's face does something complicated. "Are you sure? Sophie wants you there. And I think it's time." So Matthew stays. And that evening, as the sun sets and the stars start to appear, the three of them sit in Lena's small backyard while Sophie peers through the telescope and gasps at the craters on the moon's surface. Matthew sits on the back step, not intruding, just present, learning how to be part of something without controlling it. Lena helps Sophie adjust the focus, and in this moment, she feels something she hasn't felt in 6 years. Peace. Not because everything is perfect, not because the past has been erased, but because she chose this, on her terms, in her time. She built a life. She protected what mattered. And when the man who abandoned her came back, she didn't let him in out of weakness or longing or fear of being alone. She let him in because he earned it, because Sophie deserved the chance, because Lena is powerful enough now to say yes without losing herself. Sophie looks up from the telescope, her face glowing. "Mommy, look, you can see the craters." Lena leans down and peers through the eyepiece, and Sophie's delighted narration washes over her. And Matthew watches them both, grateful and humbled, and still learning what it means to put someone else first. The story isn't finished. There will be hard days ahead, moments when old patterns resurface, conversations that need to be had about custody and logistics and how to build a family out of fractured pieces. But tonight, under the emerging stars, Lena allows herself to believe that maybe it's possible, that Matthew might actually stay, that Sophie might get to know her father, that Lena might not have to carry everything alone anymore. She disappeared once to save herself. She reappeared on her own terms. And no matter what happens next, Sophie will grow up knowing that love doesn't require erasure, that she comes first, that her mother chose her, fiercely and completely, every single day. That's the story Lena is writing, and it's the only one that matters. If Lena's story resonated with you, if you've ever had to rebuild after being erased, if you've ever had to decide whether someone from your past deserves a place in your future, you're not alone. Thousands of people in the Billionaire romance family are walking through their own stories of courage, reclamation, and power. We're here for the messy middle, the hard choices, and the beautiful endings you're writing for yourself. Subscribe and join us, because your story matters. And we're not just here for the fairy tale. We're here for the real, complicated, hard-won victories that come from choosing yourself first. Hit that subscribe button. Become part of the family. Because we see you, we value you, and we can't wait to walk through the next story with you. Welcome home.